there, my name is Emily Ethier, and this is my histology presentation video for Bio 230 at Los Angeles Pacific University. Today I'll be looking at the 4 different types of tissue systems we have within the body, along with the different types of cell functions within those tissue systems. The important thing that I think people should know about structure and functionality of body cells and tissues is that there's a lot going on. In plain terms, there's a lot of different functions. It's kind of hard to keep up sometimes, but I think it's important to understand how our body operates, where things are coming from, and how things are moving within our bodies in order to appreciate it more and have just a better awareness of ourselves. So that's why I think it's important to know the structure and functionality of these body cells and tissues. The first set of tissues that we're going to look at are the epithelial tissue system. Now say that 3 times fast. Epithelial. Now, this type of tissue system is found on the surface of, it's found on surfaces and coverings of our body. So outer surfaces like the epidermis, like your skin, that is one type of epithelial tissue. And linings, so inner linings of like your body. So that's like small intestine linings and things like that. There are 3 different types of epithelial tissues. The first one is the squamous. So squamous is just that these are like flat little cells. So they look a lot like this, where they're kind of little flat ones. This is what is like your epidermis and lining of like your esophagus. So inside you have like a small squamous epithelial tissue that lines up kind of like this. So that's the flat, and then squamous is flat. The second kind is the cuboidal. It's a cube, basically. It's a cube-shaped cell, so it looks a lot like this. I just use these little Play-Doh things. So this is, these cube shapes are often with the structure of like your thyroid or your salivary gland. Also, along with the lining of your kidney. So this is like what those look like, the little cubes, so cuboidal. The third and final type of epithelial tissue is the columnar. So columnars are tall and narrow cells. So they look like this. So they're just like straight up, kind of like thin linings that go along like this. They go along the lining of your stomach and your small intestine. They just are really helpful for understanding how things are layered and what they look like. So your epidermis has these flat little guys, usually in simple stacks. So simple is another part of understanding the epithelial tissue, is that there are different types of structures to it. So it's like a simple kind of stacked layers, or cubicles have like staggering ones, or they're kind of all morphed together. Those are different types of things that we can get into another time. The second type of tissue system is connective tissue. So connective tissues, let me go back for a second. Epithelial tissues, what they do when, the importance of them is that they receive oxygen and nutrients from a blood supply from connective tissues. So that's another thing, is that connective tissues and epithelial tissues are connected in that way. Epithelial is on top and usually the most seen, and connective tissues are at the bottom, providing blood supply to the epithelial glands, to the epithelial tissues. Important. So now we'll move on to connective tissues, now that we have that understanding. Connective tissues are those things that support, protect, and give structure to other tissues and organs within the body. So they're all doing all the things. Connective tissues, in my mind, like everything works really all together and works really hard, but connective tissues in my mind are like always going, always trying to make sure everything's working really well, and they're just zooming. So a type of connective tissue would be blood. So this is cells and plasma. Blood works to just kind of connect everything together, provide oxygen, nutrients. Again, that's that blood supply that's going up to the epithelial tissue area. That's the first type. Secondly, there's bone. So bone supports the body and attaches muscles, and bone supports body and attached muscle glands. So it's like the muscular tissues are all together with the connective tissues. So those kind of come in later. So remember, muscular tissues, that comes in next. But you can find connective tissue in bone as well. Bone also helps support like calcium. So connective tissues help support blood supply, bone and calcium kind of extracts, and as well as the third, which is cartilage. Cartilage keeps airways open in joint areas, so in joint surfaces, so like where your kind of elbows bend, that's a joint, or like your nose, also like keeping that airway structure upright and that airway kind of open for you to be able to breathe. They support and maintain like shape between vertebrae in your spine, so you can kind of find it there. It's usually pretty easy to spot. And then the last one you can find it in is elastic connective tissue, which is surrounding the, I'm going to say this wrong, I know that, alveoli of the lungs. Alveoli is a type of epithelial tissue that surrounds the lining of the lungs. So again, all of these kind of connect together. So elastic connective tissues, cartilage, bone, and blood are where you can find connective, or are types of connective tissues. So that's that. Next, we're going to move on to that muscular tissue that I was talking to you guys a second about, which is muscular tissue is specialized for contraction. So muscle kind of bends and breaks and has a lot of fibrous tissue to it, so all kind of connects and ebbs and flows. These types of muscular tissues are skeletal, so this skeletal muscular tissue provides heat to the body and makes up the muscles that are attached to bones. This is a voluntary type of tissue, so it like produces heat. It kind of works together with that bone connective tissue that I mentioned earlier. So bone and skeletal muscular tissues work together because they're voluntary tissues. The second type of muscular tissue that you can kind of find muscular tissue in would be a smooth muscular tissue. This is an involuntary kind of tapered cells with one nucleus and no striations. So this basically maintains what is it? Sorry, I lost my train of thought. Smooth muscular tissue maintains blood flow, I believe, or blood supply within the stomach. Maintains. I forgot what I was doing. Smooth muscular tissue. Sorry, pardon my train of thought. I'm losing my train of thought. Smooth muscular tissue maintains blood pumping within the stomach and intestines. So it helps kind of produce that blood that like is the connective tissue up top, and it helps kind of produce that throughout the intestines and stomachs. That's that thing that's kind of working together. Pardon my train of thought that I lost. Sorry. The next type of muscular tissue would be the cardiac muscular tissue. So this is a branched cell, so it kind of has like a little bit like this is a straight and it's like a branch, you know what I mean? Branched cells with faint striations and only one nucleus. This pumps blood, so this is like what helps like your cardiac muscle, like within your heart, kind of keep pumping, keep going. That produces that blood flow from the connective tissues that we talked about earlier, and maintains that kind of blood pumping through, like when it comes to your stomach and intestines. So with that being said, muscular tissues work really hard and they're always moving and everything's kind of working together. So connective tissues, they're all kind of on the same line, and so the epithelial tissue. So we're just kind of going deeper. It kind of like epithelial tissue is the first, then connective tissue, then the muscular tissue, and then we come to our nervous tissue. Nervous tissue consists of nerve cells, aka neurons. Now, nerves tissue is specifically with the brain and spinal cord and a type of nervous system, not the central nervous system, but hold on while I say it, peripheral nervous system. So peripheral nervous system, spinal cord, and the brain all are types of nervous tissues. The central nervous system would consist of like the brain and the spinal cord, while the peripheral nervous system also contains all nerves that emerge from the central nervous system and supply neurons to the rest of the body. I could not speak, I'm so sorry. Neurons are capable of generating, transmitting, and transmitting electrochemical impulses. So like cell body, axons, dendrites, synapse, and neuron transmitters are all like kind of flow within neurons. So yeah, sorry. Neurons are found in a cell body, in an axon and dendrite. So that would be what the nervous system would be. So to briefly kind of wrap this up, the first tissue is epithelial tissue, then it's connective tissue, then it's muscular tissue, and nervous tissue. All of these are found within our body. Epithelial is skin, is typically like the first layer. It's skin. It's anything outer surface. It's these types of little cells that I talked about earlier, and it's the inner line. It lines also like your esophagus and your intestines as well. Connective tissues are the things that support, protect, and give structure to other tissues and organs in the body. So that's blood, that's bone, that's cartilage, that's elastic connective tissue. And then after that we have muscle tissue. Muscle tissue consists of skeletal muscle tissue, which produces heat, smooth muscle tissue, which maintains blood, I can always lose my train of thought, maintains blood flow within the stomach and small intestine, while we also have the cardiac muscle tissue, which pumps blood and utilizes your heart muscles. And finally, we have our nervous tissue, which consists of nerve cells, aka neurons, which this would be an example of your brain, your spinal cord, and your peripheral nerves. Thank you so much for listening to my presentation and stumbling along with me. Really appreciate it. Hope you guys have a good night. Thank you.